Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's CTO, DW, in for David Finkelstein today. It's good to see you, DW. It's been a while. What's new?
It has been a while. Well, things are going really well for BDEX. We have a lot of interest in our cookieless identity resolution product, especially as it works with tracking on websites. So it's been interesting to see the uptick in interest.
Yes, I love that. It is very interesting. Well, it is good to be here. I see we already have a comment on YouTube. So folks who are tuning in, be sure to let us know you're here by leaving a comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from, what it is you do, ask any questions throughout the conversation, and we will continue to address those. But other than that, today we have a really great conversation planned, and I'm thrilled to bring on Guy White. He's the CEO of Catalyx Canvas. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Oh, so Guy, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Could you please kick things off by telling us a little bit about your background? How did you become the CEO of Catalyx?
Yeah, of course. So Catalyx is about 14 years old now. We're an innovation consultancy. Our kind of focus is basically helping companies build better product ideas, particularly consumer product ideas, anything you find on a high street in a supermarket. How did I get here? Started life as a financial analyst at Procter & Gamble. Quickly, after about a couple of years, moved into marketing, was a brand manager, brand director at P&G, jumped around local, regional, global jobs, and then quit that and set up Catalyx. Felt that there was a need and a niche for an agency to help companies build better product ideas, and so that's how we started up, and that's what we've been doing for the last 14 years.
Yeah, I was commenting to you before we came on backstage. That it's an interesting transition from a financial analyst, which I would assume is one persona type to what essentially is marketing, and which is another persona type. But there's something connecting these two. I would venture to say might it be because you're data driven?
Yeah, totally. I'm analytical at heart. I'm an analyst, and I guess everything that we do at Catalyx has an element of drawing conclusions from big and small data. You're playing with numbers and looking for patterns and looking for stories within the numbers, and that's at the heart of what I was doing as a financial analyst. And marketing certainly at P&G is enormously data driven, and so that's how I made the transition, and felt that I liked the creativity and the latitude that you got in marketing that perhaps you didn't get in finance, which is kind of why I made the switch pretty early on.
So would you say that your secret sauce is a methodology that you apply for this field?
In Catalyx? Yeah, I
Yes.
think, what we've done now is we've kind of packaged up the steps to build predictably successful product ideas. So we think that there are kind of 3 stages to doing that. So identifying the platform, building the recipe, creating the execution. We think that it is a science. We've proven that time and time again. I think innovation development is one of those black box areas that everyone thinks is, it's mostly represented by a light bulb. Everything's in the dark, and suddenly you have that crazy idea in the shower that makes you £1 million or $1 million. But we don't believe that to be the case, and we think there is a system and a process to do that, and a method to do that, and that's basically what we've gone and built and what we sell.
Very interesting. Jesse, I believe you have a question, like a question for a topic, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And we do have people. We had 21 people all right away on YouTube. So folks who are tuning in, be sure to share your questions with us. But our first topic we're diving into is unlocking hidden consumer desires through data. Could you kick us off on that topic, Guy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say the first thing is a lot of people say that when you are building new product ideas, new innovation for consumers, consumers are pretty terrible at telling you what the future product is that they want. You ask them a question, they'll tell you, of course, but it's rarely right. But what they're really good at telling you about is what they like and what they dislike. They're amazingly good at reacting to something that you put in front of them. And so that's how you use a consumer to identify what the future product should be for that consumer, right? So I would say innovation is a marriage of working tightly with consumer data and consumer truths, and being able to interpret that data to identify the desires that they aren't able to articulate, and then crafting that into potential future ideas that they can then react to in a kind of iterative way. And that's essentially what we're doing day in, day out. So what are we trying to do? We're capturing consumer data. We're doing that at as large a scale as possible and as real as possible. What do I mean by real? I think it's well known that surveys are deeply flawed because they are closed-ended, because consumers are put in a kind of system two thinking mindset rather than reacting mindset. And also focus groups on the other side of things and kind of qualitative data is also deeply flawed because you only have a very small group of consumers that you're trying to work with. So what we're trying to do is look at the most behavioral way possible, images, videos, observations at scale of how consumers live their life, react with a product, engage with a category, how they shop with it, how they use it, how they consume it. And then using that pattern recognition through that unstructured data to see actually truly what it is that they want, and what it is that they're frustrated by, and therefore where are the gaps in the market. I love, just as one story, we were doing work to try and help a food company work out how to help navigate shopper, how to help understand kind of shopper baskets and how people buy food. And we showed them that a health conscious consumer is able to hold in their head that sort of rational thought about being health conscious, at the same time as a recognition that they are going to fall off the wagon in the afternoon and eat chocolate. And in their weekly shop, they will buy a healthy cereal and an unhealthy chocolate bar or set of chocolate bars because they know that that's going to happen in their lives. And so how do you have to build in that consumer irrationality, into your products, because that's how people are. So that's what we're doing day in, day out, trying to find those kind of curious consumer truths that maybe not even consumers know about themselves within the large data sets of unstructured data that we look at.
So what you're saying is that people may say one thing and do another?
100%. What people say and do is totally different. I mean, if you look at the really famous kind of work by Daniel Kahneman, the Thinking Fast and Slow, that went off and won the Nobel Prize in economics, I think. It proves categorically that people don't lie. They just don't know what their subconscious is doing. They don't know how they react, in their daily lives, because people are making decisions subconsciously constantly. And so you ask consumers a question, a direct question about what you think or what you believe or what you might do, and very, very often they'll not tell you what they actually end up doing.
Or they may not know. Yeah.
They just don't know. That's right. Like in market research, the purchase intent question is the biggest question. You're testing something and you say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to buy this product? And people are typically 3, 4, or 5. And we know that the correlation, a lot of academic research has said the correlation between purchase intent and purchase is about 0.18, i.e. 0. I.e. no, there is no correlation, because when you show me a product on a piece of paper and it looks kind of interesting, I'm like, yeah, you know what, maybe I'll buy it. And then actually when you're buying products, you don't, because you will buy the thing that you've always bought. You won't take a risk. You will see something on promotion. Like, there's so many other factors going on that actually that's a terrible indication of choice in reality. And there's tons of examples like that.
Yeah, I don't know if this fits in with your experience, but it's not uncommon for like a contractor to say, "And what color do you want this wall done in?" And, "Oh, I don't know, surprise me." And then they'll come and paint it, and they're like, "No, that's not it."
Yeah.
And then go through several iterations like that. I'm sure that happens with developing products. "I think they'll like this. What do you think?" "No, that's not it." But they won't tell you what.
I'll know when I know reaction, right? Which anyone in the creative agencies is just so infuriated by, right? So, but I get it, right? Because sometimes you just have to go on that journey to find the reality that works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed this topic. Do you have the other topic, or is it too soon?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else either of you wanted to sum up with on that one. That was good. So let's get into some product innovation. So making product innovation more predictable with data. I know there's probably some founders who would like to hear this. Everyone wants to know what's the right product to make. So what would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spent about 14 years trying to deconstruct and reconstruct this. And I think that there is a very, very predictable way of creating more successful products. The uncomfortable truth of the situation is that between 50 and 75% of products fail within 2 years, certainly in the consumer goods sector. And I think it's probably pretty true in most places. Now, if you're in software, you can pivot quickly. But if you're in something like consumer goods, it's extraordinarily expensive to do that. It's getting cheaper, but it's still very, very expensive. The reason is, I think that people just go about creating products in the wrong way. And I think that really there are three things that you need to do with data at the core that helps you craft predictably more successful products. The first thing is what we would call identify the platform or identify the desire. And that's what is the consumer job to be done. So the consumer job to be done is, before you go anywhere near thinking about your own product, it's in a particular category, in a particular occasion, what is the ideal job that the consumer wants solved? And once you understand that, you then want to work out, well, what's the tension getting in the way of that? So what are the gaps? What are the things that the current solutions, either something they pay for or something that they do kind of DIY, is not giving them? This work was made famous. The first kind of like big work on jobs to be done or made famous was sort of Clayton Christensen, and this idea that the McDonald's milkshake used to get I don't know if this is still true, but used to get a big spike of sales in the typical kind of commuter window in the morning. And what they actually found was that the job to be done from a McDonald's milkshake was to get you to work. It wasn't anything to do with something as functional as drinking a milkshake, but it was the perfect thing to keep you occupied in your drive to work for half an hour. While you were stuck in traffic, it made it more enjoyable, and so on and so forth. So you suddenly realize that a job can be totally social, totally emotional. It doesn't have to be about the functional job. It's that idea that people don't want a screwdriver or a drill. They want a hole.
A hole.
But actually, do they want a hole? No, they want a solution to hang a picture up. So that's your job and your tension. The second thing you need to work out, and most people miss this, is what we call the recipe. So you understand what it is, the job and tension. Now let's work out what are all the product attributes that you need. What's the name? What's the claim? What's the design? What's the format? What's the packaging? There's typically in any category, you can quickly write down 10 to 15 like main attributes that you need to work out what you need, what the consumer's looking for. And you need to work out which are the ones that are the most important levers to go pull, which are the category norms you can't really do anything about. And all of this stuff needs data to go explore and identify and then test and validate. And then the final thing is, how do you execute that? How do you pull all of those things together into that prototype? And obviously, how do you test and learn off that? So that's really how we would argue you make product innovation much more predictable following that end-to-end process with consumer data all the way through the heart of it. And I'd say the final thing in there is it's an iterative, divergent, convergent journey. I.e., you've got to go explore, you've got to go come up with crazy ideas, but then you've got to very quickly converge back into what consumers are saying, yeah, I like that, I don't like that, I like that, I don't like that, and then again and again and again. And with that process, you'll be assured of getting to a far more predictably successful product.
What you're describing can be applied basically to any product, right?
Yeah,
Not
totally.
just online or digital assets. Do you find that most of your clients are selling something online or a digital product, or do you have also clients that they're selling something more consumer oriented? Or
our main client base is consumer base. So
Okay.
so basically anything you find in a supermarket or a high street is mainly what we focus on. But I 100% agree with you that this is a method and a process that is universally applicable. I think the reason, my background's consumer products, that's probably why we're there. But also I think it's expensive to get a consumer product wrong. Like, you have to go and make something, you have to go to a factory, you've got materials, you've got to go, you've got listing fees when you go into a shop or a retailer. It takes a long time. So I think the stakes are higher. When you're making a digital product, you can iterate fairly quickly and fairly or relatively painlessly. But I'd argue the process should be exactly the same. And actually, although perhaps people don't deconstruct it in the way we have, if you really interrogate yourself when you've gone and made a product, if you're a founder, you've probably gone on a journey like this. It's just not been kind of written down and formalized.
Yeah, because I remember reading about how Airbnb or even Uber, they had 5 slides or 10 slides that started the whole business, and it was exactly that. It was the gaps. What's the problem that we're trying to solve? At a very low level or high level, actually, but a very basic level is what I'm trying to say. So that's I think that's valid.
Mm-hmm.
They say that this is going way back, but they say Richard Branson, when he gives founders advice, would be like, literally just get a notebook, keep your eyes open, and look for all the pain you can see in society. Like, where are all the things that people are frustrated, big or small? It doesn't matter what, but there'll be a product in there. And it's totally true, right? Like, you're constantly trying to solve an unmet need or an undermet need, or find a something that can achieve a job, be it a functional, social, or emotional job, better than what currently exists.
100%. Yeah, well, we've gotten some comments and questions in the chat, so we can go through some of those real quick before transitioning on to the next. I was even putting some questions in there because as you both were talking, I was having thoughts, so I just type it up. One of them was earlier, what's an example of a signal that most teams would overlook but actually points to a bigger consumer desire? Would you say, Guy?
I think that when you're working with consumer products, quite often people spend their time looking for functional problems. Does it clean better? Does it taste better? Does it, whatever it might be? And actually, increasingly, it is about emotional and social cues. Like, I think there's, the moat, amongst their massive distribution capabilities that Coca-Cola's built is around, happiness. Everything that they do is about creating cues around happiness, because they've identified that as a social and emotional cue that their product really sits in. So I think it's about, how do you look at your category in a sort of obtuse angle that others don't, and often you will find a way of crafting a better solution or a better positioning that maybe your competitors aren't doing. I'd also argue that in kind of B2B world, it is as there's almost more of an opportunity, because I think we spend all of our time in B2B trying to solve very, very functional problems. And quite often you find that when there is a more enjoyable way to engage with something, that's going to be the product or the service that you work with. So I think that's probably, off the cuff, something I'd say.
Yeah, I love that. One other question we've got here. How do you know that data you're using is reliable? That's a big question. Both of you, I guess. What would you say to that, DW? How do you know the data you're using is reliable? What can we tell Danny?
Well, in the physical world, in the real world, I think that Guy operates in, I guess it's easier to get real data, I suppose. But online, we get lied to a lot. Especially if we buy third-party data, it's fraught with fraud, and so it's very hard to sift through it. So we stopped sifting through it. We just focus on getting direct measurements now, and we have some control over it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Guy? What did you say? Oh, were you done? I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
Yes.
So, we face the same problem. Like the issue you've got right now is that there is an expectation that you can get consumer data for extraordinarily cheap prices. There are now massive global panels that you can link up to very quickly. I could go and get you information from 200 consumers anywhere in the world, as long as it's kind of mainstream consumers, in less than 24 hours to react to, I don't know, a statement, a product, a claim, a name, or whatever you want. The problem, and typically speaking, you're paying a consumer, 50 cents, $1, or an equivalent in some kind of credits that they then can transform into prizes. So what's happened is that entire system has been kind of gamified and botified, and you've found people that aren't the people you're meant to be talking to that have infiltrated that system, because it's a very, very quick way of churning out quick money. So there's huge fraud in our industry as well. I think, to the question, you just have to be hyper vigilant. You have to make sure that if you are working with third-party agencies that are doing this, ask those questions. How are you gathering your data? How are you kicking out the bots? How are you making sure that, answers aren't being done by AI? How are you avoiding, even real people that do things like, we call it flatlining, where they're just, answering questions as quickly as humanly possible to get the incentive. Like, there's just 100 different ways to game the system. And you just have to make sure you're working with reputable people that know all the tricks and can overcome them. I would say the other thing you do is work with big data sets, not small data sets, because then you smooth out the erroneous data or the bad actors that are in there.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, also the results will tell you. If you have more than one data provider, you test them separately, and if there's one that's just riddled full of fake data, you'll see it right away in the results.
Yeah, I agree. If it smells fishy, it's probably a fish, right? Like, that's the if it's if something's overwhelmingly positive or overwhelmingly negative, there's something wrong. It again, right? Like, don't suddenly be delighted that suddenly you've got the next $1 billion product on your hand. You probably haven't. Like, just go check. Would be, do the test again. Like absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that was all really good. Keep the questions coming, audience. We want to hear more what you all are thinking. In the meantime, we'll move on to data versus insights, understanding the difference. Guy, can you kick us off?
Yeah, of course. So I think this is such an important topic, and I think, like, data is increasingly easy and insight remains hard. The way I kind of train it in my organization is, often insight is the gaps between the data. It's the way that you look at the data, or you string the data together, or you make the leap and tell the story that the data alone is not getting you to. So a good insight might be, did you know that, this is work that we did a long time ago, but did you know that mums of babies feel that if they're not feeding their kids good quality food, that they are going to make them into a bad adult. So it's not just about the here and now, it's about the guilt that you aren't going to give your kid the taste buds or the tools or the curiosity to go eat good food when you're an adult. Like, that's the insight. Like, that's the thing that you go build the product on. The data doesn't really tell you that at face value. So I think that's the difference, is how do you, we kind of call it look beyond the obvious, or what's the wow. I find an insight, if you get into a room of people and you start talking about a set of data and you're trying to work out what's going on there, when you get to the insight, genuinely speaking, the hairs on the back of your head lift up, the noise in the room goes up, and everyone gets excited. When you're just discussing data, the room's fairly flat because you're discussing a data set, a bar chart, or whatever it might be. But when someone's going, hang on a minute, there's something really curious about this, the volume goes up. It's hard to, it's intangible, but you know when you've got it, because suddenly you go, oh, based on this, we can go and do something different or better from everyone else that's out there. Whereas data is just a fact that probably everyone else knows already. So I guess that's probably how I would articulate the difference.
What would you add to that, DW?
No, I was just thinking about it. I think it's true, but it may be an urban myth, about World War I. They were starting to use data and statistics to keep track of things. And they had issued all these helmets to everybody. And then the field hospital started getting filled with patients with head wounds. And so statistically, it looked on, the insight that they got was helmets are really bad for soldiers because they were coming in with these head wounds. They wanted to stop using them, but then somebody explained it was because they were surviving headshots, that because of the helmets that they were finding themselves in the hospital. So it's what guys alluding to is same data. You can reach different conclusions. You have to be careful about how you reach these insights. But I don't know if that's a bit grim, I guess, now that I said that out loud, but it is interesting, sometimes when you get data and you do see potential insights, subsequent tests or trials are sometimes needed to really clarify what you think you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Good stuff. Well, in terms of data versus insights and understanding the difference, I'm curious if the audience has any thoughts. But before we wrap it up, any last words of advice on understanding your data versus the insights that you would share, Guy?
I would say, so number one, I'd say data's easy. I would say what you're trying to do is tell a story with the data, and that's where the insight comes from. I would say the way to do that is look in the gaps of the data, look at the smaller points, not the bigger points. So I think what DW is saying there is super interesting, because it's like, don't look at the obvious statistic, look at this, don't look at the major statistic, look at the minor statistic, because that's probably the place when no one else is looking. So it's probably the place where the curiosity lies. And insights only come from sitting with the data for a while. And sometimes you have to be super uncomfortable. I think there's a level of creativity required and discomfort required to kind of push past the obvious. And that's just part of the process. It's a creative process, I would say. But when you get there, it can be enormously satisfying, because it ultimately gets you to that bigger truth that you can act on.
Well, I'm dying to ask you this. I didn't get a chance to ask before we started, but so you have data. But I don't know how many clients you have, but let's say you have 10 clients in with different products.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself with looking at possibilities of having some synergies between these clients based on the data you have for both of these clients?
I mean, we're not really
Or,
allowed because
well,
obviously
I was gonna,
every client's data is a walled garden to them. So, but I think where it does get interesting is when we work with a client over a period of time and do multiple pieces of work with them, then you can start to see some really good meta-analysis across those clients. So, you know, a lot of the work that we do is like testing and optimizing product concepts. You do that over the course of a year in a particular category, and very, very quickly you can start to see, you know, what's working, what's not, and why, and therefore how to really enhance their innovation development. And that comes from that kind of meta analysis in the data. So in that regard, absolutely we would. But yeah, between clients, it's, you know, we'd have to put the wall gardens up, the walls up.
I'm referring to something that we used to call second-party data. I don't know if it's called that anymore, but we have first-party data, third-party data. There's this gray area of second-party data that is potentially very, very synergistic if done properly. And I just was curious if this had ever occurred to anybody at Catalyx, you know, to pursue or not. Of course, it would take you know, the clients agreeing to work together, you know, or share data or whatever. But just wondering about your thoughts about that possibility.
I mean, I think you know, where there's data, there's insight, and if you can get clients to collaborate, obviously it's interesting. I mean, we generally focus client by client. I think if we're doing work just for ourselves, then it can get really interesting. And obviously AI's a fascinating enabler to be able to accelerate big data sets. Potentially if we're putting out, you know, thought leadership on trend reports, category reports, that kind of thing, then we can start to see patterns in the data and what, you know, categories should be considering and looking at. You know, a big one right now is in food, and you know, everyone's talking about protein. Everyone should start to be talking about fiber, because that's the next thing that's happening. You know, starting to look at the differences between, you know, GLP-1, again, super fascinating space. Anyone working in kind of health or dieting and what that means in food. So lots of work going on there. Functional drinks, all of these kind of trends, meta trends come through that kind of, you know, broad data analysis that's going on. I don't know if that's kind of what you're referring to.
Yeah, you mentioned AI, and I was going to ask you that too. It's like, are you using AI in the data acquisition, cleaning, or are you using it for the analysis, or are you using it for the insights, basically, or all three? You know?
We use it all the way through. Fairly sort of, we actually use AI to identify AI. We were talking about fraud earlier, so it's actually it's a really good tool for spotting itself.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so we use
The
that.
fake
We use it
reviews
very
and
much
stuff.
for insight. I mean, you know, 14 years ago when you had unstructured, you know, verbatims, you'd need a human to code that. You know, and a human could typically do about 500 lanes of verbatim a day. You know, fast forward to now, and obviously it's transformationally different. So we use AI for that kind of first pass of data pattern recognition. Within Catalyx Canvas, on any of our kind of divergent exploration work, so if we're looking for jobs to be done, we find that AI is better than primary data, because we find that jobs are fairly universal at a particular level, and in most consumer categories there is enough, you know, of a data lake, enough content publicly that you can pretty much work out what it is that people want if you have a good enough prompt to go do it. So yeah, I'd say the one place that AI we find weaker is when you're looking for the tension. Because AI is literal, right? AI is looking historically to project forward. So if you're looking for something that doesn't yet exist, which is kind of what attention is or an insight is, we find that that's where images and videos of real behavior with a really good strategist that knows what they're doing is going to get you to a far deeper level than AI. But I'll be I'll be super interested to see if others that are listening to this feel differently, because there's fairly big debates raging on that topic right now.
Is it safe to say then you use AI to reduce the tedium? Because, it does that very well, but the real high level thinking still requires somewhat of a human to be involved.
Yeah, I think so. And we talk about it like AI in the engine room, humans at the helm. Like,
Yeah.
the sort of analogy I do is like on paper, my 7-year-old daughter could drive my car, but I'm not going to let her drive
Not a
my
good
car because
idea.
she doesn't have a license. It's AI is a bit like that, and I think it's an outstanding capability as long as you've got the expertise to guide it.
Agreed.
Well, this is all interesting stuff. We're getting folks in the comments. Someone probably on your page there, David, Christina Schwartz, is giving a shout out. But we need to make sure we get to our final topic because we only have 7 minutes left. And that is tech stack. We ask all the guests on Deconstructing Data, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack that empower you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I lean into the AI tools, and I actually would argue that it's a blended approach of the main LLMs that give us an edge and understanding how to craft the right prompts in the right ways across the kind of 3 or 4 main LLMs that we use. I'd actually say that I'm an increasing fan of HubSpot from a CRM point of view, and I love what they're doing from sort of bringing in enhanced capabilities and their kind of Breeze AI capabilities to train the team. So we increasingly embed HubSpot into how we work, and I find it very intuitive. We have some specific platforms that are very kind of niche for consumer data capture. So one of those platforms we've been a long partner with is a company called Recollective, and they are just a fantastic way of getting unstructured consumer data at scale. So images and videos, and how you then analyze and process that data. So yeah, there are probably a few examples of that. There are probably a few that come to mind.
Nice. Love that. Sound like some interesting tools. So in closing, Guy, would you like to let listeners know how they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So if you're very welcome to email me. I'm at guy@thecatalyx.com, THECATALYX.com. Obviously, you're very welcome to jump on our website, www.thecatalyx.com, and have a look around there and drop us a note from there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me at Guy White, and I'm very active there as well. So if anyone wants to reach out and have a chat, I'd be very, very welcome.
Awesome. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Guy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate your insights and all the work that you're doing, especially in the data space. So seriously, just a really valuable conversation. And DW, always great to have you back on the show too.
Thank you. I always enjoy these things because I learn so much. Yeah.
I know, right? Yeah, same. Okay, well, until next week, I'll go ahead and close us out. But thanks again to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great
Thank
week.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit BDEX.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX.
Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jesse Lezak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time.